Yeah, I grew up in Coogee, which is in Sydney's eastern suburbs, and I was a water baby from the start. So I loved the water. I learnt to swim at Wiley's Baths, which is a sea pool just south of Coogee, and we were a swimming family. So as I got older, I went to swimming training in the morning and the afternoons. I have three older brothers, and they were really into the surf club. So we just spent a lot of time at the beach. Every weekend we would be going to surf carnivals. So I was out in the sun a lot. I remember us having pink zinc. I don't remember having any other kind of sun protection. And then when I got into my teenage years, you do what most kids who grow up on a beach do. You hang at the beach with your friends, all summer holidays and every weekend. So, we'd lie around chatting and sunbaking. I spent a lot of time in the water, but I spent heaps of time in the sun. And then I was pretty sporty, so I played netball and tennis and softball. So yeah, always kind of outdoor really. I don't have any history of melanoma that I'm aware of in my family, but both my mother and my father's heritage is Irish. So I never thought I had fair skin though, I guess because I was always out in the sun, so I always had a tan. So I kind of thought I had olive skin, but yeah, I've got Irish skin, I've got Irish colouring, so it is. I mean, this is the whole problem in this country, is that it's full of people that have come from generally the northern hemisphere, places like England, Ireland, and our skin is not made for coping with this environment, and we don't realise that. When I was in my teens, having a tan was the thing, and we would start tanning or trying to get a tan in our August school holidays, which is usually still pretty cold. So we would head over to one of the harbour beaches because they were more protected. And I had one particular girlfriend who was the fairest of us all, and she would bring a roll of alfoil and baby oil, and she would put the alfoil down and lie on the alfoil and apply the baby oil. I was never that bad, but we all used oils, like it was reef oil or ombre solaire if you were very fancy. There was no, and they might have had, I don't know, SPF 5 or something. So we just, even at school, we'd hoik up our school dresses at lunchtime and sit around the playground tanning our legs. My first diagnosis, which was the melanoma on my back, I was devastated by the diagnosis, but to be honest, I guess I wasn't really shocked because I knew that, the history that I'd had in the sun. And there's a certain amount of shame, or for me, there was a certain amount of shame being diagnosed with melanoma because you think, I've done this to myself. It takes a while to work through, I guess, that shame and to be able to tell people about it, really. To be honest, I didn't actually see those scans until I think after I had positive results. So I saw some similar scans, which were bone scans that were initially done by the endocrinologist. And they had red and green on them, and I looked like a Christmas tree. I was just lit up. It's pretty confronting to see that you've got something going on like that that's all through your body. Initially, when I saw those scans, the endocrinologist wasn't sure what it was, so I didn't know it was melanoma. And he said, oh, it could be a blood disorder or, something in the blood. And naively at the time, I thought, oh, well, I hope it's in my blood and it's not melanoma, because what I knew of melanoma was looking at that scan, that would be a death sentence. It wasn't until I kind of, I don't know, you're shocked and you're scared, but I just wanted more information to help me deal with the situation. So as I got more information, I guess I was better able to accept the situation that I was in And once I had next steps in place in terms of treatment, for me, that alleviated, I guess, some of the concern, because at least I felt like I was doing something towards getting rid of it. Once I was diagnosed with melanoma, I think that was the Wednesday. The next day I was in seeing Professor Long. And then from there, I think it was maybe a week or two before I actually had treatment, because they had to send me for PET scans because I hadn't had those, and MRI on my brain. So they started treating me for pain. I was in quite a lot of pain, which was quite debilitating. Like, I couldn't drive. Even when I was sitting in a car, I had to get people to, drive really slowly and avoid bumps and things like that. There are days that you cry all day because, I didn't want to die. And there were days where I was in a hell of a lot of pain and, I couldn't move off the lounge. Just, getting out of bed was excruciating. And then, you have good days where you have people come and visit and, you're just with loved ones. And, I did find that, people came out of the woodwork. Well, it wasn't that they came out of the woodwork, it was the people that you didn't expect who stood up and wanted to take the journey with you, which was really beautiful, So I had some really beautiful moments with people as well. So they were treating me for the pain and were talking to me about doing a trial. They seemed to be quite enthusiastic about me doing a trial, and I think that's because, other than the melanoma, I was healthy. I had no other comorbidities. So we were talking about doing trials, and they were kind of telling me about how that would proceed and what would be involved. And then once we got the results back from the MRI, and it identified that, from the PET scan actually, identified that there were lesions on my skull, it was decided not to wait for a trial, because I would have to wait a couple of weeks to go into the process, because they wanted to avoid any chance of it getting into my brain. The evening before my first treatment, it was really nerve-wracking, because I knew that they were giving me kind of the big guns. So, I was nervous, because what if it didn't work? What if something happened? There's a lot of toxicity with this treatment, so it could stop because your body can't handle it. So there's nervousness going into it. And they also tell you about a lot of the side effects, which is good, so you're prepared, but it can freak you out a little bit. So after my first infusion, the next morning I woke up with a really high fever. And, I think all rational thought just went out the door, It just became all emotion. I'm thinking, I don't know what to do. I need to ring my brother, who was there with me when I, got the debrief on it. And, he was just said, well, take some Panadol, like it was, take some Panadol and just watch what happens. So I think, yes, you can lose that rational brain. It then went on that I did have too many side effects, so we had to stop treatment. So the treatment plan initially was that I would have 4 of these infusions, and then after that I would have an infusion every, I think, 3 weeks for 2 years. After my second infusion, I had my optic nerve was affected. I had neuropathy, which is kind of pins and needles in different parts of my body. I had some weird hearing things going on, and then I got colitis, which is an inflammation of the bowel, which means that you got diarrhea the whole time. So they stopped my treatment after the second treatment, and that was really scary, because I thought, they've stopped the treatment, like nothing's happening. I've got no hope now. What's going to happen? And the nurse at the Melanoma Institute, explained to me, the process is still working. The immunotherapy is there to, get your body to fight the cancer. So you've just got to relax and, kind of go with it. So as a result of my treatment, I got vitiligo, which is basically the pigmentation of my skin has changed. So I first noticed it, my eyelashes went white, and I didn't know that this could be a side effect, so I kind of Googled it and found out that getting vitiligo was actually a good sign of a good prognosis, so I was kind of happy about that. And then later on, it just started to spread throughout my skin. So how it's been explained to me, I don't know that they're actually quite sure why it happens, but they believe that what's happening is your immune system seems to think that the melanocytes or the melanin is melanoma. So it's kind of attacked them, basically. So I don't know if that's correct. My dermatologist, who checks my skin every 6 months, she seems to think that the melanin's actually moved, because she thinks I'm quite brown in the areas where I've still got, pigment. So they don't seem to really know why, I don't think. Yeah, but it's a good thing. So I think I started on medication maybe 2 weeks after being diagnosed, and that initial immunotherapy, I almost had immediate response to that in terms of my pain. We did a scan maybe a week or 10 days later, and already there was improvement. I mean, I know that I could feel like a lump underneath my breast, and that had disappeared. And I was starting to feel better within myself. I still had pain, but it wasn't as bad as it had previously been. When they told me that my scans were clear, when I got that result, I couldn't compute it. I thought, what does that mean? Like, do you mean I don't have it anymore? Or, it was unbelievable. It's miraculous. So, you're just joyful, and you just realise that you've still got life ahead of you. But it's also, I guess, contained by the thought that you're much more conscious of your mortality now. Like with melanoma, you never ever say that you're cured, because it's a type of disease that just can keep coming back. So from my first diagnosis to my second diagnosis was 8 years, and in between I'd had no issues whatsoever. So, it went from a mole on my back to right throughout, my skeleton. So I just live my life the way that I used to. People ask about, do you have a bucket list, or, do you do things differently? And for me, just living my normal life is the joy, because I didn't think that I would have that. So, we all live, I'm part of the melanoma kind of patient community now, and you're very much aware of, your own mortality, because you're seeing other people not make it and seeing them go through really hard times. Like, apart from me having such a great response to treatment, I don't have any, any side effects. My life is normal. I didn't have to have surgery. I didn't have lymph nodes removed, so I'm not dealing with lymphedema. Like, I'm really one of the truly lucky ones. And I guess that's why, I do things like this, because I feel that, if I can help make a difference, then I feel like that's probably maybe why I'm still here, My professional career has been in marketing and advertising, so I've worked in large advertising agencies as well as some of Australia's major corporates in the marketing department. And after I was ill, I went back to work. I went to a new contract job, and at one point I was reviewing some creative work for a new campaign. And one of the executions that I was reviewing was glamorising tanning in this ad. And as you can imagine, I had a pretty emotional response to it. My gut dropped, and I thought, I can't approve this ad. And I was in a new job. My boss knew my history, that I just, had a stage 4 diagnosis. But I was also in the situation where I felt, how do I tell people that I can't approve this? Because, am I coming out and telling people that I've, in a professional environment, that I've, had stage 4 melanoma? Anyhow, I decided that I, could never approve this ad. But what I also realised was that I'm probably one of the only people in, advertising and marketing who would have that response, because there are no guidelines in the advertising code of ethics to do with sun protection or tanning. The issue is that in advertising, there is no requirement to show sun protection in situations where it's necessary. So, in the middle of the day. So I think that if in advertising the use of sun protection was normalised, and such as, people wearing hats, shades, visibility of things like sunscreen, long-sleeved, clothing, all those sorts of things. And look, I get it, it's probably not sexy, and it's probably very difficult to film someone wearing a hat, but there's research that shows if you show a tanned person in the media, it influences people's intentions and behaviour around tanning. Similarly, if you show someone who's got a paler skin, you'll influence their behaviour to not tan. So the research is there. I think that something needs to be done about this, and it's not just in advertising, it's in all forms of content and media. So if you think about the reality shows, Love Island, where they sit around all day sunbaking at the pool, it's sending the wrong message, and it's reinforcing this glamorisation of tanning, and also our bronzed Aussie culture that, we are so attached to. So when this piece of creative came across my desk, and I realised that, hell, I need to do something about this. So I took it upon myself to go into advertising agencies and marketing departments and tell my story and educate them about the lacking in the code about sun protection. Most of the agencies that I've gone into, in fact all of the agencies I've gone into, have been very receptive to my story. It hasn't brought, I don't know if it's brought about any industry change, but I know that people personally have been more conscious about their own health and been for skin checks. I think, it's going to be a very slow process. I just am shocked every day when I walk, if I walk along the beach, in the middle of the day, the amount of people out sunbaking. It's really interesting. You may have seen some of the press recently about the cool cabanas, people complaining about what they're doing to the beaches, that's not my beach, if people want shade, they should just stay at home. So there is this real outcry against the attempts people are making to actually help themselves. And I think that's attached to their worldview, because their worldview is very much attached to this sun tanning culture. So I think it's not about telling people not to do these things. I think we need to have better role models and role modelling about the right things to do. It's a very difficult conversation to have with someone to say, ask why are you tanning, or should you be tanning. I recall mentioning I'd met a friend of mine's friend, and she was quite sunburnt on this day I met her, and I said to her, oh, you're quite sunburnt. And she got quite aggressive with me, because I think there's also regret and shame in a situation like that. So it is a very delicate situation, because you're dealing with people's self-esteem. A lot of the research shows that people tan for self-esteem reasons. They want to be attractive, and tanning is one of those ways to go about, building that attraction. So It's a very sensitive issue, yeah. I mean, my own personal experience now, I swim very early, like I swim at 7 o'clock when the UV index is very low. I don't, I very rarely will go to the beach in the middle of the day. I go to a swimming club in summer on Saturdays, and this year I've requested that we buy a sunshade because there is no shade, very little shade where we swim. So that's been very popular. Everybody's now communing under the sunshade, which is great. But I think all these little things that you can do in a positive way will have actually much more impact than kind of the negative aspects of, telling people the risks. I think the biggest thing for me is just the acceptance that no tanning is good. Like I think in my earlier days, well, I'll put on the factor 30 when it was back then or whatever, and I'll still lie out in the sun. And I realise now that that's just, not on, because you're damaging your skin cells, and you just don't know whether your genes are going to respond in the way that mine did and end up with melanoma.